How are you, everybody? Really good to see you here. You'll have to kind of stick with us as we kind of enjoy this new webinar experience. I suppose you're all kind of really experienced in them all. And I'm going to turn on the other seminars now, the other seminar webinar leaders. We've got Kevin Bennett, Bryony Taylor, and Darren Parker, who are online already. So hello to you all. So hand over to Kevin, who's going to give us a greeting from Premier.
Yep. Hello, everyone. So I'm Kevin Bennett. I'm Premier's Chief Operating Officer, and it's really fantastic to see so many of you join us here today. For those of you who don't know Premier, we're a Christian media organisation in the UK. We have national radio stations, we publish magazines, we have a lot of websites, we do lots of events, or at least we did do a lot of events until very, very recently. We was due to be holding the big apologetics conference in London this Saturday, which sadly is no longer to be able to take place. But the good news is that we are able to do things like this. And Premier has been involved in the digital space and specifically trying to help the church with its digital transformation for about 14 years now. We started the Digital Awards and Conference that we run back in 2007. And our heart has always been, as our logo says on above Pete's head, is to inspire and equip and connect the church for digital ministry. We've always felt that media has a massive role to play. Premier started as a medium wave radio station just in London and has grown to be a national radio station. But we've always felt that actually digital media is a massive part of what's possible. And so streaming and online video has always been a part of our story. And it's really because we feel that there's so much opportunity for the church, so much possibility for the church to minister well in a digital age. We've been doing this now, as I said, for quite some time, and this series of webinars has come to be because we're in unprecedented times. I don't know if you, hopefully you can see this. I feel a bit like this. I don't know if you feel a bit like Gromit here, where the train is rolling along the track. And as far as digital church goes, and as far as running an organisation digitally and remote in this period of lockdown, it has felt quite somewhat like we are laying the track literally as we go like just ahead of the train that's rolling behind it. And I think for our organisations and for our churches, we probably feel a little bit like Wallace here, kind of clinging on at the background, wondering what's going on and trying to keep up with the changes that are happening around us and trying to figure out how we can do this well and keep pace. And one of the key reasons we're here today, and we've called this webinar series From Survival to Revival, is because we think that what it's going to need is a lot of confidence. The church has got some challenges to face, but just kind of like this guy here who's clinging onto a rock. He's doing this because he has the confidence, the skills, the experience, and the rope, fortunately for him, to keep him there. And I think so much of our challenge in the church of late has been down to our to confidence. And one of the things that we want to talk about through this series of webinars, today being the first one, is how we as a church can gain confidence in the digital space so that we can go out there to preach the good news, to draw people in, to evangelize, to disciple, to minister, to sit alongside at this time. And so you may have noticed, or it may have been hidden from you, but the password to get into this webinar was Matthew 16:18, where Jesus says, "I will build my church and the gates of hell will not prevail against it." And that really is our heart for this webinar series. Jesus is building his church. His church is not limited to buildings. And so as we unpack digital church, survival to revival is our theme today, that's really what we're trying to think through. But also, as I was thinking and reflecting prayerfully on this, the Bible verse in John 3:8, where it talks about the way that the Spirit blows where it wants, and sometimes you don't perceive where it comes from or where it goes. And as we reflect on what God is doing through this time, we have to try and key into what God is doing to build his church through his Spirit. It's so easy to get caught up in the practicalities. Is it Zoom? Is it Skype? Is it this tool? Is it that tool? How do we run our services? Should it be, multi-track recording of our worship? So many questions start to come out. But actually the heart of it is that God is wanting to build his church, and we need to listen to his spirit, be attentive to that. And so that's going to be a thematic. This is not just going to be about nuts and bolts. This is going to be a holistic look at where the church is at and how the church is moving through this time, and hopefully together we can grow in that. So that's it. I hope you enjoy this session. I'm going to pass back to Pete, who's going to lead us off.
So I'm Pete Phillips, and I'm head of digital theology at Premier Digital. I'm also assistant professor at Durham University, working in digital theology as well, and trying to explore some of what's been happening. Some of you already found the question and answer button, and we'd like you to submit questions and answers if you'd like to, about any questions. We'll try and kind of deal with those while things are going on, and Kevin and I will have a question and answer session later on. But I'm going to kind of look now at some of the background to what we're doing and why we're here to have these seminars. Sharon Stone, a prophet, kind of said recently that she felt that a coronavirus is going to come, or a virus is going to come, to shut down the church and to move it from a place of revival to survival. And it's our belief that we want to shift that in the other way round. We want to move from the church simply surviving through to the church going into revival. And that's kind of prime aim of our conversations here. We want to see the church grow. We want to see the church in the UK and beyond the UK flourish and go into new things. And that, in a way, is what digital theology is about, allowing us to look at how the theology and the church go hand in hand with that sentiment. So let me share my screen, and then I'll give a little presentation about where digital theology is taking us at the moment. So the digital church has kind of gone viral. It's gone into this kind of, it's gone online at last. First of all, in China, with the church facing backlash from the government for what it's trying to do, by kind of using online surveillance to shut the church down. The Chinese government now using COVID to shut down digital expressions of the church. But then in Hong Kong and Singapore, we're going to hear from Alex Young later on. Churches shut down quickly and began to establish whole programs of services, Bible studies, prayer meetings online. We saw that repeated in African churches that are thriving online, huge growth in Ghana and in South Africa. And hopefully in one of the seminars, we're going to have VTJ from a church in Pretoria, who's doing some fantastic work down there, seeing that this isn't just the kind of thing that's happening in the UK, but it's something that's happening all the way around the world. It's happening here in Europe as well. I remember seeing one of the first ones of a Catholic priest in Italy, and he was so fed up with doing mass to his empty church that he decided to get his congregation to send him selfies, and then he printed them all out and stuck them to his pews. This kind of sense of he wanted a congregation to be there and to be engaged in what he was doing. Think of the Pope wandering through the deserted streets of Rome before Easter, praying for the people, praying for healing for the nation. And here in the UK, just so much has been happening. If you kind of go onto YouTube on a Sunday, I am sure that you could spend every single waking hour watching service after service after service. Lots of different ones, from Zoom-based services to YouTube-based services to live stream communions to, well, just anything of any kind. But then there's also that wonderful stuff about doing coffee meetings afterwards, or providing dial-a sermon. It's great to have Bryony, who's kind of one of the pioneers of that. I'm sure she'll be talking about that in a bit. But lots of other things as well, about prayer meetings midweek. We're going off to a prayer school tonight after the seminar's finished. And just so much creativity. So much is happening about the online church. The big thing about the digital church, though, is it's not just about kind of doing something in a stopgap. The digital church is also a kind of disruption machine, a bit like Uber did for the taxi firms. The Spirit is a disruptor, and it's time for new wineskins. The digital church can also be seen as the kind of enabler of new mission. And we're kind of looking at three different ways in which kind of digital church comes in. First of all, it comes in as the enabler of offline church. Remember, in Web 1.0, where we put up our church notice boards onto the websites. And that kind of the first way where we enabled religious practice that happened offline in the online zone. But then we began to extend that. We extended the offline church, the physical church, into this online zone by having prayer meetings or something, or encouraging more and more interaction. Now we see a big disruption moment for us. As the church has been forced to go online, it has to do things in a different way. And so we're finding lots of different ways and trying to work out how we can do church, which is real and authentic in an interactive digital world. There are limits to that, of course, because the disruption engine isn't quite perfect. There's a lot to do yet about everybody getting online. There's issues about how the elderly and the housebound can use their technology. And it's great to see us now diversifying, adapting towards perhaps the end of this lockdown, to new kind of things. There's a few things here about all that's happening online in the digital church. You know, your average kind of thing that's on the screen. But here's my friend Nell Shallow, a Methodist minister based in Sheffield and working around North Lincolnshire. Who's doing an agape meal on a Sunday morning at the very beginning of lockdown. Sanctuary First at the bottom left-hand corner there, doing a virtual coffee shop every day. But people pop in and with their own cup of coffee and then just kind of sit there and chat with everybody else who's there and gossip about things and go into different groups on Zoom and so on. And of course the Daily Hope phone line that the Church of England established last week. Free phone line of hymns, reflections and prayers. But amazing how much that's kind of spread out now across lots and lots of different churches. I'm sure you've seen this poem, this picture cartoon, where the devil says, "The COVID-19, I closed your churches." And God says, on the contrary, I just opened one in every single home. A marvellous thing has happened. Lots of stories of new people coming in, people joining Alpha, people coming back to church after a long absence. Uprising of prayer groups, Bible studies, lots of people engaged in daily prayer with our vicars and our ministers. A sense of holy devotion sweeping the land. It's really exciting. It's a fantastic place to be. And that song we played at the beginning, the way in which, if you hear Tim Hughes and Sam Hales on the Premier site, you have a kind of conversation about it. Tim shared all the things that have happened around the blessing and the new things that are happening. It's time to turn to God and to see what He's doing. Because in digital theology, we are absolutely certain that God is found online as well as offline. That God's populating the digital airways as well as normal physical places. And that people can find God here in this medium. And it's going to be really good to hear Bryony and Darren and David and Alex later on talking about that. But we also need to look at the possibility of going out of lockdown and ask the question about what next. What about the end of the lockdown? Will it be back to normal? I doubt it, actually. Many will still remain in quarantine. Many are isolated. Will we be able to bring in a socially will we be able to sing in a socially distanced church building, for example? It may be that this new normal that we're kind of getting to terms with is here for a while. And the mutation of COVID-19, which we've seen in Europe and the US, may well mutate again and bring in yet more waves of infection. What we need for the future, perhaps, is the best of both worlds. A fusion of the local and the digital, where the physical church and the online church work together to maximize the kingdom's reach into our land. And that's really what we want to do in these seminars called the Digital Church webinars. We want to see how we can equip a digital church to stand alongside the physical church and the physical church to stand along the digital church and work together to spread the good news of Jesus across our land and beyond. Digital creatives, physical church creatives, now is both of your time. The biggest challenge for churches across the land will be to create the best of both worlds. Hey, Kevin, over to you.
So now we're going to be, I think, heading over to Bryony, who's going to be giving us the first contribution from our panelists. So welcome, Bryony, and the floor, so to speak, metaphorically, is yours.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. It's great to be here with you today. I just thought I'd show you what's on my t-shirt, because it's really annoying when you can only see the top of someone's t-shirt. It says, "Let your faith be bigger than your fear." So I thought it was an appropriate t-shirt to be wearing in these difficult times we're going through. So what I'm going to be talking about is 5 key lessons that I've learned over the last month or so of being a priest in lockdown. I minister in the northeast of Derbyshire in the United Kingdom, and I have 2 churches that I look after. So that's the context that I'm in. So these are some of the things that I've thought of, and I've deliberately gone old school and I've done this. Oh, and it doesn't work with my background. That's good, isn't it? So first lesson, don't compare. That's my first lesson. Don't compare. Don't play the comparison game. Comparison, as they say, is the thief of joy. And it can be really soul destroying, actually, to spend your whole time looking at what the church is doing up the road, especially with digital stuff. I found it really helpful. I was praying at the beginning of the lockdown, and I had this very strong image of a story from the Second World War. And of course, we're celebrating VE Day this week in our country. And during the Second World War, British people that had boats were encouraged to help with the rescue effort at Dunkirk. And about 800 boats were sort of cobbled together to go and rescue the men from the beaches at Dunkirk. Some of you might have seen the film of the same name. And I just had this image of all those boats. Some of those boats were little sailboats, and some of them were huge steamers. And if the little sailboats had said to themselves, "Well, I'm only a little sailboat, I can only carry 1 person, I won't bother going," then more people would have died. And so I had this image of all of our little churches being like these boats, this big flotilla. Some churches are huge, big steamers with huge teams that can put on really flashy technical stuff, and others are just a little rowboat with 1 single person plugging away to get where they need to go. So don't play the comparison game. I think that would be my first lesson that I've learned so far. Number 2, this isn't going to work, is it? Here we go. Number 2, 1 thing at a time. 1 thing at a time. There's such a huge choice of what could be used for online worship. Do you do Zoom, Facebook Live? Do you YouTube Live? Do you pre-record your services? Do you do a podcast? There's a massive array of different things and different options available. And what I would suggest is choose 1 thing, perfect that before you then try something else. Don't try and do it all at once. Choose 1 thing, get that working, get it going, and then move on to maybe trying something new. And be clear with your people that it might not work because you're trying things out. This is a sort of experiment for all of us. There's no blueprint. We are a bit like Gromit, putting those bits of the train track in front of us. And so be honest about the fact that it might go wrong and it might fail. I think if we're open about that, then it just makes it a bit easier when it does fail. And quite often the technology does break down. For example, I tried to use Skype the other week for after service coffee, and it was really glitchy, and a few people managed to get in, but some people couldn't get in, and it was a bit of a nightmare, to be honest. And then the following week we tried Zoom, and Zoom worked a lot better. It still has its issues, but we got there. But I was really clear when we tried Skype, we'll just give it a go. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And I think that's quite important. So just try and achieve 1 thing at a time and get that right, and then move on to the next thing. And once you've found something that works, stick with it and keep going with it, and make it part of your regular offer. So that's my second point. My third point is context is key. Context is key. it's all very well if you've worked out how to do a whole service on Zoom, but if your attendees can't access that because it's something unfamiliar to them and they don't have the right software on their computer, and that's something that I've really discovered actually, if people have an old laptop, and a lot of people's laptops are quite old now, and they don't have an up-to-date version of Chrome, it's actually quite hard to get onto Zoom. And I had a problem with trying to help a couple of parishioners get into a Zoom meeting. It said the audio wouldn't work because they didn't have the right browser. And it's all this sort of language that's unfamiliar to a lot of people. So it's all very well if you've done something flashy on Zoom, but if people can't get into it, then there's no point, is there? So let the church up the road do their flashy thing. That might be right for their context, but your context might be quite different. So if you have very few people that are online, and a lot of people that don't use the internet, then you might want to put your energies into developing a dial a sermon system. I think Pete mentioned that earlier, which I've set up in my parishes because an awful lot of my parishioners don't have access to the internet at all. So what I've done is arranged a system so that they can dial a phone number and listen to this week's sermon over the phone. What's been quite scary is that quite a few parishioners have been listening to the same sermon more than once in a week. So they'll listen on a Sunday and then they'll ring back again later in the week, which is a bit scary for us preachers, but really encouraging at the same time. So do what's right for your people and right for your context, and don't feel guilty if you're not doing something that somebody else down the road is doing. I think that's sort of reinforcing that don't compare yourself point. I choose to pre-record my Sunday services because most of my congregation have quite basic Facebook skills, or maybe not even that. They just have a computer that is attached to the internet and they can get on the church website, but that's about as far as their use of technology goes. So I tried to keep it as simple as possible. So I've just made a video that I've pre-recorded service that I've put on YouTube, and it goes on the church website and it goes on Facebook, and people just have to press play. Because in some cases people don't even realise how to turn up the volume on their computer. So we have to kind of take into account the people that are going to be engaging with our worship and produce something that's going to work for them. And especially if technology doesn't work the first time and people aren't used to using it, they do give up quite quickly. So it's quite important to try and keep it as simple as possible so that what they see the first time they experience that church service online, that it works quite well for them. Sorry, I'm just looking at my notes to make sure I'm explaining everything. Yes, I have found, however, that there is a willingness in people that I haven't seen for quite some time for people to learn new things and to try new technology. I think one of the positives that's come out of this is people have actually seen technology as a benefit and as something that might help them. And so one way that I've involved different people in church services is by getting them to encourage them to record Bible readings using WhatsApp. There's a built-in voice recorder in WhatsApp. So people have done the church readings for Sunday and sent them to me on WhatsApp, and then I can include them in my pre-recorded service. And people have, sort of over 80-year-olds have actually been able to do that with WhatsApp because they're used to using WhatsApp by keeping in touch with their families. So it's finding ways, simple ways, to help people to feel included and to hear their voice. So context is everything, really, with this stuff. Number 4, ask who's missing, who's not here. I think one of the great things about digital technology is that it can be very inclusive. I've just started actually to try and make sure that on YouTube it will automatically add closed captions, so subtitles, and it will do it on Facebook, but you have to kind of tick that box when you're uploading a video to Facebook. So can I encourage you all to do that so that people that need subtitles can get them? I know that somebody asked earlier if we could have subtitles in this. I think it's harder to do it at live events. Hopefully we'll be able to get them up at some point in the future. But do consider who might not be able to access what you're doing. I often say to people that I have sort of 2 congregations in my care, really. I have my offline congregation who aren't on the internet, and then I have my online congregation, and they both need my ministry and support. And so I try and make sure that I try and balance the amount of time I spend with each congregation. So if I'm doing lots of nice pre-recorded services online, I try and make sure that I've also got something like the dialer sermon system and a printed newsletter that gets posted out for those people that don't have the internet. So I think it's really important as we go through this period to make sure that we keep asking ourselves that question: who's missing out on this? While I'm doing this, who's missing it? To make sure that we include. And I hope that in the future, as we return to some different way of being, I don't really want to say go back to normal, because I don't think we will, but when we come out of this particular lockdown and come into a new way of being, I'm hoping that one of the things that will continue is our seeking to include everybody, and especially people with disabilities, in our church services. My final point is, sometimes people used to say keep it stupid, keep it simple, stupid. That's the way it goes around, isn't it? Keep it simple, keep it simple. And that's partly why I've been a bit daft and done these handwritten papers instead of a PowerPoint. A few years ago, quite a long time ago now, I used to work in the field of what we used to call e-learning. And I used to teach teachers how to use technology for learning in the classroom. And I always used to say to the teachers that E doesn't stand for electronic, it stands for enhanced. And I used to say, if the technology is not going to enhance what you're doing, you don't need to use it. If writing on a flip chart does what you need it to do, then do that. Don't feel like you've got to sort of do a PowerPoint if actually a flip chart will do the job just as well. Somebody said early on in the lockdown on Twitter, a little pro tip was, not every call has to be a video call. And I think at the very beginning of the lockdown, we all got a bit excited about Zoom and Skype and seeing each other on the screen and things like that. But actually not every single call, especially a call to an individual, has to be a video one. And of course, we all know now that video calls are quite tiring. They're more tiring than voice calls. So keep it simple. Don't feel like you've got to use flashy technology for everything. It just needs, you need to only choose to use it when it's actually going to enhance the experience for people. So I would say keep it as simple as you can. Yeah, and that's my 5 tips. There's lots more I could say. There's lots more things I could share with you about what it's been like. But I know that everyone's kind of been adapting in different ways. But I wanted to share a few points just to help you out. I have written them all up in a draft on my blog, so I will be publishing the things I've just said on my blog, which is bryonytaylor.com, and you'll be able to have a look. And on that blog as well are lots of other ideas and thoughts that I've had over the last couple of months on ministering in a digital world during a lockdown. So every blessing to everybody. Keep going. God is good all the time. Thanks.
Thank you very much. So I think we're going over to Kevin now. Kevin, hi.
I think that we've got, is it right to say that we want to remind people that there's the opportunity to do questions in the Q&A box, and we're going to have a special time of questions coming up. So if you can see it, depending on what device you're on, it could be on your phone, it could be on your tablet or your laptop, but if you can find Q&A, then you can type your question in there and we will pick a selection of them and we'll put them to the panelists, or either Pete or myself will tackle them as well. And that will be coming up after the next speaker. But now I think we want to introduce Pastor David Adbali from New Wine Church in Woolwich in London. And he's going to be sharing his experiences and his wisdom of being a digital pastor there, and experience up to date and during this time. Welcome, Pastor David.
Thank you very much, Pete. Thank you very much, Kevin, for having me. And hello, good afternoon to every one of you. Well, I know we are facing an unprecedented time during this season, but I also believe that that brings great opportunity. I came across a particular article from The Guardian on Sunday. Probably many of us will have come across it as well. And it says 1 in 5 of those who have tuned into services in the past few weeks said they have never gone to church. The most frequent subject of prayers since the lockdown has been family, 53%, friends, 34%, thanking God, 24%, the person praying for people in the front line, 28%, 27%. Someone who is unwell with COVID-19, 20%, and the same is true with many other countries. I'm sure you get the point. The point is that people are hungry for God right now. Those who feel they were never religious people are really, really hungry for God, which gives us a great opportunity for us to be able to reach the people that God has called us to. My name is David. I'm an associate pastor at New Wine Church and also the head of media. So that makes me the digital pastor, which means every time we sit down as the church leadership, looking at our outreach, how to reach more people, I'm sitting now wearing the digital hat on, thinking, how can we replicate this online? And then as a result of that, I wrote a book called Build Media Team. And there's a website that I have that has to do with that, about how to build a media team, which is the website is buildmediateam.com. But today, I want to talk about how to make use of how online engagement can really translate and can give a potential for online evangelism. And I'm just going to talk very, very briefly. Pete and Kevin have been very, very gracious. They told me to take 45 minutes for my talk, which I thought was very generous of them. Sorry, no, that was a joke. I'll be done in the next 9 minutes, okay? We're going to talk about the why, the what, the why, the who, the when, the where, the how, the now, and the support required in terms of online engagement and evangelism going hand to hand. Now, let's first start by saying what is it that we want to achieve? And is that we want to achieve online engagement and evangelism, which means we want to make sure everything we do online has at the back of it an intentionality to make it evangelistic. Why are we doing this? Which takes me to my next slide. The reason why we're doing this is that evangelism is our main business. You know, companies at the end of the year, they do their profit and losses. But for we as the body of Christ, as church, as head of charities or different ministries or bloggers or YouTubers with Christian content, one of the main things that we want to make sure is that we're able to reach more people. That is our business. I'm just so inspired by that great evangelist that passed away maybe 1 or 2 years ago, Evangelist Rainer Bonke. He said that the church that does not save the lost is lost itself, which means it's our job. Who are the people that we have been called to reach? We've been called to reach people, those who are non-Christians. Everyone needs to be reached, especially in our local community. Now, I have a church background and I'm involved in the leadership of the church as the digital pastor. And one of the things that we're being intentional about now is that even though there are members of our local community that don't come to our church, we felt now is the time, especially when our congregation does not come into their local community. Now is the time for us to actually increase our online engagement. So we're doing a lot of engagement and we are geo-targeting our local environment where people will be able to walk in distance from our church, because we thought now it's even time for us to reach them. Yes, of course, those in our local community, but then we have to reach whoever wants to engage with us. In our church service, over the last couple of weeks, we've got inquiries from Iraq and Iran. I mean, things as far away from there during this period as well. We've got stuff from South Sudan and different parts of the world, from Dubai, which means people are hungry for God. As you know, the sense of security that people have now is out of the window. Now, when are we to reach them? We know this 24/7. We're to reach them 24/7, which means we want to put a system in place that is just running around the clock across the globe. When do we reach them? We reach them. Online has now become our new mission field. We have discovered that some inquiries has been coming across to many churches and ministries. Now it's actually more than those who have even walked through their doors, especially now. I just strongly believe that things will never go back the same. My previous speaker mentioned that as well. And so this gives an opportunity for we as the church now even be ready for life post COVID as well. Now, the online has become our new mission field. That is where we are reaching them. Now, how do we reach them? That is the juice of even what I want to really, really dive into. And 3 things I want to recommend. Number 1 is community engagement. Number 2 is members empowerment. And number 3 is media evangelists. Let me just break this down and I give some examples as well. We notice, for example, our services, our church services, when we start, we notice that quite a lot of people come in early, but much more people at the end of the service. They just want to stay around and just hang around and say hello to people. And one of the things we then do is that as the service is going on, the online service, we begin to say, hey, if you need prayer right there, why don't you just indicate that you need prayer? And there was an instance where someone from out of the UK put there that their wife, I think it's someone from India, that their wife was not feeling very well. And you could imagine just all the hundreds of people who were watching the service live was mentioning that person's name, and they were praying for that person. So much so that even when the service is over online, people are still chatting for another 5-10 minutes. They're still chatting and saying hello and praying for each other. And so I want to encourage churches and ministries, or any of us that have events where people are gathering together online. Let us encourage that, where viewers are actually talking to themselves. They are praying for themselves. There's a sense of community that gives, and even the prayer group right there while everybody congregates together, even though they're there for the service. So here they're hearing the word of God that inspires them and uplifts their spirit, but also they now see that other people, other viewers are doing the same for them as well. The second thing is members empowerment. We know that many people would like to share their faith online, but their big challenge is the fact that sometimes they feel they don't maybe have the material they need, or they don't have the confidence that will start that discussion. Now, as churches or ministries, if you have videos, there might be videos you produce, or the ones you didn't produce, you just get and you have the copyright. You put it in groups and places where members of your church or your ministry or people who follow your blogs or your YouTube subscribers can go and they can use that material, put it on their WhatsApp status, put it on their Facebook timeline, or put it on their Instagram story. Things that would trigger questions. Some of it are stories as well. I'm reminded there is a member of our church who she works in a care home. And being a Christian, she always requests for her to have Sunday off to be in church. She doesn't want to work on Sundays. Sometimes they give her the days off, sometimes they don't. But the proprietor of that care home has practically antagonistic and quite curious as well. I said, tell me about this Jesus. She's a Sikh or Hindu. And, she would talk about Jesus, but the proprietor was never interested. When COVID-19 came, nobody in the care home had the infection, not even the patient. The only person in the entire care home that had it was the proprietor. And she was in hospital. She said she almost died. When she got to a point where she thought, well, this is a matter of life and death, she's called on Jesus. She had an encounter with Jesus Christ. She was healed. She strongly believed, with a very, very strong conviction, that it was the encounter she had with Jesus Christ that saved her, and that is why she's alive. So she came back. When she resumed back to work, she now told this member of our church that, that this was the encounter. And she said, the moment your church is open, I can't wait. I am coming straight over to your church. Now, that kind of story is so inspiring. Those are the kind of stories we kind of want to put out so that other people will hear about it. And it becomes a tool that empowers our members for online engagement and online evangelism as well. The third one, which has been very crucial for us, is media evangelists. If you have a congregation as little as 20 or 30, create a WhatsApp group, yes, with the permission of everyone, and they're happy with it. And that becomes a place where you can dump materials, permit me to use the word dump, put materials in that everybody can circulate. So there are times we say, oh, we want to put this material out to just encourage people, because this news have just come out about 5G radiation being, the symptoms we're facing. Because we have a group of media evangelists, the moment we put that material there, it just spreads like wildfire. They forward it, they make it their WhatsApp status, they put it on their social media platforms, and all of a sudden, by just connecting with one group that was set up intentionally to spread the good news of Christ, especially during this period, that makes a huge impact. Also, when those media evangelists are having challenges, they put their challenges in that WhatsApp group. Other people will encourage them. So it's almost like another community that has been set up intentionally to be able to inspire everyone to use their online engagement and turn it to online evangelism as well. And it's amazing the number of people who are really now being converted, or seed that has been sown in their heart. Now, this is now taken to action. What do you need to do next? I strongly want to recommend that every leader, maybe a church, maybe the pastor of the church or whatever, to appoint a key person that will say, this person is responsible for making sure that our online engagement becomes rather evangelistic, and we share that vision with them. I am a firm believer of the fact that if you want to go fast, go alone, but you want to go far, then, you know, take a team with you. So I'm a firm believer on building a media team, which is what I've done for over 20 years, and to share the vision with them. There is only so much we as that leaders or the pastors or the vicar can do. But if we now build a team, we are empowering people to be very evangelistic, even in terms of their online engagement as well. Then develop your strategy. What's the strategy? Because, hey, we know that failing to plan is planning to fail and involve others. That is what we have done. So right now, there are a group of leaders or some people that we are contacting and say, you know what, just go on our online service. And the only reason you're going there to hear the word, but you're going there to just interact and communicate with people. Then the third thing is the one about content. Produce in-service content. I'm sure many churches are really beginning to do that now. If you want any support, let us know. And then out of service content as well. So in-service content is, yes, your service time. People will come and think, this is interesting, this is uplifting. But then what happens outside, after the service, which is the out of service content, which we recommend that we should do a lot of that. Actually, a lot more engagement takes place outside of service time than during service time, which gives room for more evangelism and more connection. So, well, if you think, what can I do to just take this forward? I mean, I'll be glad to share what our experiences have been in New Wine. There is even a simple document I put together because I've been talking to quite a number of church leaders and ministry heads on how to enhance their media during this period. And it is not so much even to deal with the issue with COVID right now, but also how do we prepare ourselves for life post-COVID and make sure that our ministry online is engaging and it is equipped for effective evangelism as well. So I have a free download, just a one-page PDF download that just kind of tells you how you can develop your strategy or what you can take forward. If you go to buildmediateam.com, which is where I dumped it in, or you can always go to the New Wine website as well, newwine.co.uk. But I put something on the buildmediateam.com specifically for those on this group. And I trust that, you know, the points in there will be able to help, and I'll be glad to serve you as best as I can. Thank you so much for your time.
Fantastic. Thank you, Pastor David, for that. That was really, really helpful and very, very thorough. Excellent stuff. I can see lots of questions have come in. I think we've had about 40, 50 questions come into the box, and I can see that the panelists have been beavering away answering those. What we will do, we'll continue to do that, so we can kind of respect the time that we've put on. We won't have an extended time of Q&A now, but I will just pick out a couple just so we can answer those. So I've seen quite a few people both in the chat and on the Q&A asking about whether this session will be recorded, and just to reassure you, it is going to be recorded and you will get sent a link. That would definitely be sent to you. I'll just throw a very quick question to Bryony. I've got a few questions about your dial a sermon. Here we go. Dial a sermon. What does that say? Go to coronavirushelp@bryonytaylor.com. We have had a couple of questions about that, and I think that would be really helpful. So if you can see that, maybe also Bryony could put that in the chat as well. So that would be great. There's lots of people, lots of interest there. So do keep asking your questions. The other thing we'd really love you to do, as well as doing questions in the Q&A, and I can see many of you are interacting in the chat already, it would be lovely to hear your stories of what's going on in your church with regards to digital church during this time. It may be that it's just, you know, you've done a coffee on Zoom and that's worked really well for you. You might have stories about people that have joined your church during this. You've never encountered them before, but they've done it. But, you know, sharing our stories is really important. So we definitely encourage you to do that in the chat. So keep going in the chat, keep chucking questions into the Q&A. The panelists will continue to answer them, and I will pass back to Pete now, who'll take us forward.
Hi, can I just come in on that? So somebody's just put up a load of details about what about safeguarding people in Zoom meetings and things like that, and what about this and what about that. This is the first, and Kevin's going to come to this later. This is the first of 8 that we've already got lined up for you in the coming months. So what we want to do is kind of the big tectonic plate kind of shifting in this one, to kind of show you what digital church is all about and digital theology is all about. And then we've got loads of seminars set up to do all that. There's no way we could deal with everything in this session. And we're already a few minutes late, so I must not talk too much and pass you on to the next speaker. Bryony's still holding up the thing, which is really, really good. And I will spotlight her video so that you can see there. Dial the sermon, go to coronavirus help at bryonytaylor.com. And I also kind of put into the chat box as well another website as well, website link to Bryony's blog, where she's talked about it and updated with a how-to video. Isn't that right, Bryony? Yeah. Just
so yes, he has. Yeah.
And is it easy to do, or is it really technical?
It is a little bit technical, but if you work through the steps step by step, it's not too bad. And once you've set it up, it's relatively straightforward to keep it going. So, and it's relatively low cost as well. A lot of people have asked me how much it is. You need to sort of put £20 into an account at the beginning. But I've spent literally since the beginning of I've been using it a month, and I don't think I've spent £1 yet. So it's pretty cheap. It's about £1 a month, depending on how long your sermons are.
That's great.
Yeah.
It's great. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Bryony, for all your work you're doing. We're going to go in here now from Alex Young. I'll cancel the spotlight video there. We're going to go over to share video from Alex in Hong Kong. It doesn't quite work with the time over there. So you pre-recorded this work for us. And this is Alex giving us an insight into what's happening over in Hong Kong right at the moment.
Hello, everyone. I'm Alex Young from Hong Kong. Thanks, Professor Pete Phillips, for inviting me to share here the latest situation of churches in Hong Kong. So, where are we at now after a few months? There are 5 quick points of quick observation about the online churches in Hong Kong that I want to share with you. So number 1 is we notice that there's a general increase in the number of participants in online church. It is more obvious for churches who choose to open up the service to the public online. And of course, we cannot conclude immediately that it is a revival, as we don't really know the quality of this increase. If the newcomers are just some random people, random passerby, or how the church track the numbers of attendance, this requires much more detailed examination. But it still tells us more people are able to see what the church is doing publicly. The church now can tear down our building's wall to let the world see us. Our non-Christians friends is able to see what we are doing inside the church. There's no longer physical entry barrier for them. Number 2, there are still churches choose to limit the access to their own congregation due to various reasons. Particularly for those smaller churches, because certain part of the worship can be quite personal. For example, there can be a section, there's a prayer request for a particular person. It may not be suitable to open up it completely. For these churches, they see a slight decrease in attendance, particularly in those community who is less technical savvy, or for the elderly people as well. That reminds us, when we are so fancy about this digital transformation, there are always some people we need to help, we need to take care of, so that no one should be left behind. So for this group of people, many churches are doing social service. We reach out to them. We are not completely locked down during this period, so we are still able to go out and contact these people, and we give them masks or sanitizer and take care of them, for example. Point number 3, the churches started to have creative ways to host their Holy Communion online, still respecting their own tradition, theologically speaking. Now, there is an online church called Flow Church, hosting, I believe, is the very first public online communion online, asking the participant to prepare the bread and the cup by themselves. And then during the service, they take the communion together at the same time. So they emphasize that this is not a virtual communion. This is a physical one with real people and real bread and real cup. And for my own church, my minister take even one step further, by preparing some prepackaged cup and bread, so that our church people can come back, before the service during that week at any time to avoid the crowd. And if there's anyone who cannot come back for whatever reason, the minister really go out and then visit their home and deliver the communion to them. So, and then during the online service, we have the Holy Communion together on Sunday with our cameras turned on, and then we can see each other. I do remember many people cry during the communion. We have a sense of togetherness, even closer than what we are when we are physically together. Point number 4 is regarding the church life experience online when compared with that in a physical churches. I asked many friends, they still feel that the experience we have still rooms to improve. Some people have difficulties to concentrate at home while attending the online service. It is a personal reason. But many of them said it is the lack of sense of community, the lack of physical encounter with the church community during or after the church service is a big thing for them. But it can be improved by hosting different types of meetings other than the Sunday service. I remember when I have the first fellowship meeting on Zoom back in March. After not seeing them for more than a month, I am deeply touched. I know I need them. I know they need to be connected. We are so eager to see each other, to pray for each other, pray for our own family, pray for their family. So this sense of community can be enhanced by having creative ways of meeting online. We need the church community to support our spiritual life. The last point is regarding the cooperation among churches. This is also very important. In the last few months, we saw a lot of praying meeting, seminar, workshop hosted by different churches, join force together. Even they're from different denominations in Hong Kong, they do it together online. Back in the old days, churches are just busy doing their own ministry, and sometimes this ministry are competitive. But now we know there is a need for unity, a need to be a real body of Christ. They know there is a need to be connected again, and we have to do the work together. This is very essential for the revival of the whole Church of God. So that is where we are at now in Hong Kong. In the last few weeks, particularly last 1 to 2 weeks, we have 0 cases every day, or very, very few cases every day. It looks like we can gradually return to the physical church mode in coming weeks. Even so, I expect we still need to wear our own mask for the rest of the year. Even so, churches are already different, I would say. We are no longer bound by the physical wall. If revival means increase in number, we still need to look at the exact figures to conclude anything. But if revival means churches can be united again, helping each other, helping the people in need, then yes, I would say I do see signs of this. Thank you for listening to my sharing. Thank you very much.
We're going to move over now back to London and have a chat with Darren Parker, who's the head of Everyday Touch. Kevin, you can introduce Darren, very well as a friend?
Yes, great to introduce Darren. So I played that video of Wallace and Gromit earlier, where we was all laying the tracks as we went in the do digital church. Well, Darren has the privilege of not having had to do that because Everyday Church has been online throughout the week, every hour of the day, I believe, for some time now. And Darren's seen some great results in terms of people coming into his church. So yeah, I'll pass straight over to Darren to tell you all about both the backstory and how they've also adapted to the environment we're now all in.
Sure. Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, we started our online church about 5 years ago, just realizing that suddenly the internet was where people were moving to. They could buy things online, they could go banking online, shopping online, they could literally do everything online. So why not go to church? And once we started floating the idea, we kind of did a poll vote across different people outside of the church. They said, yeah, that makes sense. Everything is going online. So we took the jump, we took the dive. And 5 years ago, we went online, and we haven't looked back since. We've had some interesting times. We knew there'd be some interesting questions asked about theology and everything behind that. What about baptisms? What about communion? What about all the other things you would do in a building? How do you do that online? So we kind of ended up writing about a 32-page document covering all the biblical aspects of that, and just hopefully covering all the questions that are coming through, and really making sure that we were fully grounded. We launched Everyday Church Online as an actual church. Like I said, we've been doing it for 5 years. So when it's come along to COVID-19 arriving, people are saying, well, how's it affecting you? And I'm actually saying, well, the original online congregation who we've had with us and still visit, there's no real change. What's happened is all those who now suddenly can't go into their own church building and have to move online have suddenly grown such a huge awareness that that's why we do online church. It's not as a comparison to a church building, it's a complement to a church building, and therefore so people can't actually walk inside the doors of a building. And once you start thinking about that, who cannot go inside a building, and you start thinking, okay, other religions, and you think, okay, people just on different shifts, they just can't get to a church that's open on a Sunday. You then think of ill health, old age, possibly through abuse or any other, in prison. We've had quite a few people from Nigeria and Uganda join us from prison. I don't know how they get mobiles, but they do, and they join us. But it's just really interesting to fully understand and grasp. So when we were asked the question, which we were prior to lockdown, we were asked, well, what is the difference between a church, church that meets in the building, a church that meets online? We always say it's the wrong question. It's not a comparison. It's not a difference of, it's really a complement. It's a complement to the church that meets in the building. Extends it. If you think a building's got walls and that's almost a boundary, you think it further than that. You think, okay, there might be a parish or community. And sometimes psychologically we make those our boundaries. Suddenly as you step online, you have access to over half the world's population, and there's no walls. They are just a click away. You suddenly got a community that you can outreach to, just a click away, 4.8 billion people. That's quite a few people to reach out to. And it's just really just taking what Jesus said. He says, reach out to the world. And when we think church, a lot of people think, oh, online church is what this is on a Sunday, but online church is a complete package. How do we serve people throughout the week? How do we do life groups? How do we do small groups, Bible studies, meetings? So what we found is when COVID-19 came along, our 7 church building churches then all joined online, and we thought, right, how do we re-engineer that? We suddenly had a dual platform. So where we were originally thinking global, now got to think global, and yes, how do we do local community of London? So that was really interesting, and we've really had to sort of increased the act. We've suddenly got 8 pastors on board, very, very quick to critique, but they're very helpful in their advice. And just really establishing that. We've also engineered things like a daily prayer meeting on Zoom, which is very well controlled. Great security settings in Zoom. The host has full control, and we have up to 75 people, which we can randomly put into breakout rooms, which people love, and they get to see each other. So we're seeing that a real community is growing. People are just really seeing more of each other than they would do on a Sunday, if that makes sense. And we're seeing a massive turnout for our prayer meetings. And also we had a leadership meeting last night, and we suddenly found that through Zoom, where only one of them can go because the other one had to stay to babysit, suddenly both of them were there. So we had one of the biggest attendance for our leadership meetings. But we've really seen the church online just absolutely expand. We use something from the church online platform used to hold our cities. And what they've done is they got 10,000 churches now taken this platform on because it's free and it's very easy to use, and a huge support structure behind there, and it's all free. But they sent out some numbers over. I just want to encourage you on this one. So if you take all the churches that are using the church online platform over the Easter period, just from Good Friday to Easter Sunday, they ran 31,858 services. They had 97 million people attend church. We had just under 70,000 people make a commitment to Christ. We reached every single country on the planet. And that's just amazing. That's a huge outreach. And it's just really growing community. But again, like I said, learning very fast. And this is what we're aiming for. It's about community. It's about the small groups. How do we establish that? So what we're seeing now during this COVID-19 time is people are actually going down to the grassroots. And what we're seeing is a church that's growing. Yes, we've still being kept together with Zoom and just the small groups of meetings via Zoom. We have prayer meetings, we have leadership meetings, we have our church on a Sunday on a platform. But what we're really seeing is people just starting to reach out into their community. So instead of like this church service being a big invitation to come to, they're starting being invited to their home groups. And we're seeing that it's a real house to house we're hearing in Acts. And I think that's where revival is going to kick in. People are just starting to impact their communities. And we're just seeing it kind of explode in online church. And so looking on the other side, coming out of COVID-19, a lot of questions are asked, well, how do we get back to the normal? And I think it's been raised here as well. There won't be the normal. It won't be the same. So much has changed. And I think the church's eyes have opened. I mean, we've seen a huge increase in attendance across the world for online church because suddenly access is easy. I mean, HTB are just online alpha. We've been waiting for that for so long for online church. We've run it and it had a massive attendance because people can suddenly go. There's no excuse. Biggest excuse for alpha, can't make it because it's too far away. It's in the wrong place. But suddenly online alpha, then online marriage course. And all these suddenly courses are becoming online, and suddenly so many more people who physically can go into the side of a building can now do it online. So we're seeing attendances increase dramatically for courses, for ministries, for church services, for small groups. And so I think as we come out of COVID-19, we just got to be really careful that we just suddenly don't drop it all. We've got to learn from this and learn that online church is, in its whole package, is a real complement to how we did church before. And just really the opportunity to reach further into your own community, but also reach further out into a wider world, because we've got the good news of the gospel. We've got the good news that Jesus gave us to share to the world. Why would we keep it under a bucket or a bushel, which sometimes can be our buildings? And it's just great to have it online, get it out there, and let the Spirit have his way, really. I think that's really it. I mean, just so excited about what's happening in online church, and just all the other churches really taking up the mantle. No matter how more you can get up and with online in 3 days. I've seen some other churches do that. You just go to church online platform. It's a good place to start. It's free. They even give you some sermons to do. You can get a whole bunch of free resources at open.church. Massive load of resources from worship right through to ministries, to kids. And there's a lot of areas I want to cover, like obviously kids ministry is big, especially with them being at home, and some parents prepare out thinking, oh, what can I do for the children? But having something throughout the week and just understanding we're moving from a geographical location to a digital. Geographical may well be just to be on a Sunday, but as soon as you go digital, it's 24/7. And you really need to think about that.
Brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for that, Darren. So it's really good to have so many speakers who've been able to share with us. Kevin, are you online? Are you on as well? So let's have this kind of just reflect on some of the things that we've heard so far. One of the things that I've been interested in is about the numbers game. And I've talked about that on the religion media service about what might be happening with the numbers. Have you any insight, Kevin, about these viewing numbers? What is going on?
Well, I think that there's obviously a lot of stats being released. And I think there was the Tier Fund /Comres poll at the weekend, which suggested that a quarter of people had engaged in an online service. Premier's about to launch some statistics, which they're not quite as impressive as that, but in terms of saying that so many people have logged in, but certainly a high proportion more than you'd expect. So I think lots of, you've kind of got the empirical stuff at one end suggesting something's happening. There's more people engaging with matters of faith and online services that would cross the threshold of a church. And I think on the anecdotal level from the churches that I'm talking to, they've certainly seen a kind of an uptick in the kind of drop-ins, so to speak, people who are maybe they wouldn't normally come. They come occasionally, they're Easter or Christmas visitors, but they're coming and dropping into the online stuff. I do think that there is a novelty factor right now, and I think there's a lot of people trying, and I think so I do think there's a bit of a how can I put it? There's a bit of a duty on us to figure out now during this time of openness, where lockdown's happening and people are kind of exploring matters of faith, they're a bit concerned. There's a bit of a window, I think. So I think how we welcome people and how we reconstruct what we do, so that we don't just do exactly the same thing that would have been done in a church building, but we do something that's appropriate for the medium and appropriate for the level of faith of the people that might be dropping in, is something to think about.
And one of the things that I've been kind of reflecting upon is not just the kind of increase in numbers. I think there is something happening with the numbers, and I'm very intrigued about that. And we're trying to get some more work out of Comres to look at what's happening with those numbers. I mean, we can see it in all the people's expressions, in the various speakers, their testimonies of what's happening. Fantastic stories there from Darren, but also from David and Bryony and so on. Bryony, what's happening in kind of rural Derbyshire with numbers and things like that? Is it just a kind of deepening, an increase of numbers, or is there something about a deepening of discipleship that's important as well?
I've definitely seen discipleship kind of improving in my own congregation. So like the other day, fortunately, just before the lockdown, the Sunday before we had to close our churches, I managed to get a booklet out to everybody that was called Praying in a Pandemic, and it had a load of prayers in it. It's got like a daily prayer service. It's got Compline, which is night prayer, in there. It's got loads of prayers for praying for people that are sick and so on and so forth. And I sent that out, and I was speaking to one of my ladies over the phone the other day, and she said, I've prayed more since the lockdown than I've ever prayed before. And one of the things that's been recommended to everyone in the lockdown is to have a daily routine. And so what I've been really encouraging all of my people is to say, well, make prayer part of your daily routine, and something that I started at the beginning, using a really great tool, actually, if anyone wants to use it. It's called anchor.fm. It's a free app, and you can create your own podcast really easily. If you're not very techie, I would recommend it because it's great. You just press record, and then you just press publish, and then it puts your podcast online. It's fab. And so I've been doing daily prayer like that, and I've been sharing it on my Facebook pages and things, saying, pray with me today. It's 5 minutes. Do it on your daily walk or when you're doing your washing up. So discipleship's definitely been something, and I have noticed a few local people, and I think what's interesting is, okay, some people are going to be accessing stuff from churches not where they live, but actually people do quite like the familiarity of their local church. And I've actually had quite a few people that I've never met before. A couple came to our coffee on Zoom on Sunday, people that I'd never met before that live locally, and I put up the link and said, do you want to join us for coffee? And they just turned up and said, hello, I'm Anne, I've been looking at your services, and we just had a chat. So quite a lot of local people are engaging on a deeper level. So yes, I have seen numbers go up. I think they have to be a little bit careful, because you see kind of really high numbers and you think, well, how long did they look at that? Because it pops up on your Facebook and you click on it and watch it for 2 seconds and click away. So it's trying to get a bit deeper into what the engagement is, but I've definitely seen improvements.
Great, and that's anchor.fm, is that right?
Anchor.fm for a really great, easy to use podcast service. It's fantastic, and all you need is a smartphone. Great,
thanks. I think David wants to come in. David, have you seen the same kind of expansion of discipleship and deepening of ministry?
Oh, absolutely. We've seen a lot of that. Just three things, really. Number one, there's just that sense of community where members of the congregation feel, okay, all right, we're not able to come into the building as we would love to, but just the fact that we are coming together, that has made it very, very good. The second thing we've noticed as well is that our prayer meetings has increased fourfold in attendance compared to when before the lockdown. And so people want more teaching about how they can be more equipped to be able to pray for themselves and pray for their loved ones during this pandemic. Now, the third thing we've also noticed is that with our the cell groups as well, is that the hunger to want to learn more about the Word of God. I guess when that whole thing about 5G was going all around as well, people wanted to learn a bit more about eschatology, and there was all those rumors going around that, oh, maybe this is the end of the world, and maybe someone is the Antichrist, and the vaccination would light you up for 5G radiation. So the hunger was there to be able to dive deep more into the Bible, and then to be able to pray to have a bit more understanding. And we have seen an increase of that as well. Actually, for some strange reason, our experience is that we've seen that the church has kind of come closer more and become much more stronger, and then just making very good use of online platforms to strengthen that community, to grow together, to study the Bible together, understanding, and to pray together. That's what our experience has been. Yes, the numbers has been going up, very, very exciting. Of course, we had Easter, the spike was through the roof. Then, the week after it dips a bit, but now actually it's on the rise. If we remove the Easter spike and we just look at it from when the lockdown started all the way till now, it has been going on pretty much steadily, and that is what our experience has been. Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much. Let me just kind of do some reflection upon this. And just one or two people. So we were hoping that Dr. Blackwood was going to be coming on from Spurgeon to share with us. But while I was hearing all that, I kept going back to Ezekiel 37 and the prophecy over the dry bones, of course. Prophesy to these dry bones and say to them, dry bones, hear the word of the Lord. This is what the sovereign Lord says to those bones. I will make breath enter you, and you will come to life. I will attach tendons to you and make flesh come upon you and cover you with skin. I will put breath in you, and you will come to life. Then you will know that I am the Lord. I think Doth is here, actually, which is really, really good. Doth, you must be... I'm not seeing you in the thing. Let's switch over to Dothan. She can give us her Bible reading. But the thing that really struck me was, Kevin, can you just handle that a minute? While it's
I'm on it, Dothan. I've just opened a mic.
Brilliant. I was just kind of reflecting on that. At a time when a COVID virus is stopping us breathing, that passage which says, I will make breath enter you and you will come to life. I just wonder whether that's kind of a Bible verse for today. But Dotha, great to hear you. And please speak to us.
Thanks, Pete. Thanks to everybody as well who've been sharing with us so fantastically about all the things that have been happening during this particular season that we're in. And I thought I'd just take a few moments to share on, as we've been talking about, from survival to revival reflections. And this particular Psalm 46, is one that is often sung, is often quoted, demonstrating, for instance, ideas of God, a God who is there, the one in whom we can trust. And rightly so. It's no doubt a psalm that many of us have heard and quoted and referred to during this COVID-19 period, this period of trying to, in some sense, be what some persons' ecclesiology suggests is a gathered people while being isolated, social distancing, in essence, being scattered. And so we have to revisit and think again about our ecclesiology. What does that mean to be the people of God? I think it would probably be good for us all at some point to reflect further through the collection of the Psalms, especially, for instance, Psalm 137, the exile psalm, as some call it. How can we sing the Lord's song in a strange land? And for some, the digital land is a very strange land. And we could talk about, the fact that memory can open up wounds, can build character, can encourage faith. But this particular psalm, Psalm 46, with the inscription that says, for the director of music of the sons of Korah, according to Alamoth, which incidentally means young women. I like that. I know I'm not young anymore, but let's not go there. This psalm is a psalm of confidence and trust in God, a hymn of praise, of the presence of God. It's a psalm that reminds us that believers need not have fear ultimately because we are secure and our faith is secure in the God of all creation. And although faith is not a word used in the psalm, it is a key theme, the idea of trusting in the presence and the power of God. It was a hymn that was the inspiration for Martin Luther's "A Mighty Fortress is Our God." It's also a psalm, though, about a sudden lifting of a siege against Jerusalem from survival to revival for them. A key point not to miss, of course, in this psalm is, but also in the situation that we find ourselves, is this. When, as verse 2 says of Psalm 46, the earth gives way, the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, the waters roar and foam, and the mountains quake. In other words, earthquakes, storms, floods, destruction of property, COVID-19 perhaps. When things happen, yes, there is pain, there's grief, there's loss, there's hurt, devastation for some. The reality is these things affect us and our surroundings. Take, for example, the earthquake in Nepal, Kathmandu. For example, that meant that the world, the city, the buildings, the places that they knew and the way they knew it didn't exist anymore. Something changed. But God is our refuge, our help, our hope, the one who leads us from survival to revival. The psalmist reminds us that regardless of what's going on around us, we don't have to be frightened. Our faith remains because God remains. God is the tower of strength, the refuge. The evidence of their eyes and our eyes might suggest otherwise, but because of who God is, the maker of heaven and earth, the creator, the psalmist knew they could confidently say that they would not be moved. When you know who God is, his nature, his character, it doesn't matter in a sense of whether we are digital, virtual, or physical. We can confidently say, like the song, I will survive. Anyway, let's not go there. I will survive. It's one thing to declare that God is our refuge. It's quite another to then assert, therefore we will not fear. Confessing what we should is easy. Bringing our hearts to feel that the thing that we've confessed securely and surely is a monumental step. Our God is not like those to be anxiously sought and difficult to reach. Rather, he tells us in the psalm, he is accessible to the full extent of our need. And therefore, we don't need to fear. Do we need a place to hide? Do we need a refuge? Do we need a place to be while we're in isolation? God is our refuge. A refuge is a condition of being safe, sheltered from pursuit, from danger. A refuge is something or someone that provides for us that security, that safe place. And for some, the digital world feels like an unsafe place, but we can still remind them that God is our refuge. Yahweh is our safety. The psalmist didn't stop there, though. He highlighted that this wasn't merely personal to him, but that when we have troubled cities, troubled churches, God is also our help. Verses 4-7 remind us that God is not only creator, but he is sustainer. An interesting observation has been made that, for instance, Babylon is built on the Euphrates, Egypt is built on the Nile, Rome on the Tiber, London on the Thames. But Jerusalem, the city of God, has no river. So when the psalmist speaks about a river, he probably wasn't referring to Gihon Springs by the east wall of Jerusalem or the Jordan, which was miles away. Rather, he was referring to the stream that would refresh Jerusalem while they were under siege, while they were in their kind of survival mode, if you like. This was the presence of God. Think about it. in our current situation. Although we cannot meet together physically, we've already heard from Darren, and especially that, I mean, hey, what you talking about? This is normal for me. This meeting together online is fine. But for some, it's a strange new world. Though we cannot meet together physically in one place or hug or greet each other with a holy kiss, the psalmist is reminding us that it's God's presence with us in our bedrooms, our living rooms, or wherever we find ourselves, that it's his presence that will refresh us. That has caused us to survive, but also is causing us to be being revived. We can claim today that this God is with us wherever we find ourselves. This God, the God of Jacob, who, when we see the church worldwide and locally being threatened by an earthquake of persecution or a flood of materialism, the winds of gossip, dissensions, and gales of envy, perhaps, we can have the confidence that this God of Jacob is our help in trouble. Jacob, a man with a past, with many ups and many downs, with a family life seething with crises and dramas, deceptions and feuds, rebellion and heartache, colliding personalities, and this idea that the roar and the foam of life in his family. But yet we find a God who has taken hold of such a man, such a family, and called them, used their turbulence and harnessed their energies for his purposes. Imagine what God could do with and through all of us in this present crisis. Imagine, look at what he is doing already, that, as we've just heard about, despite the many ups and downs and setbacks and heartaches in our own lives and in our own churches and ministry. The city was threatened, but it didn't fall. It survived. These are God's assurances to the troubled church today. His unfailing grace, his promises are new every morning. The promise of a new day that evil will ultimately be destroyed. In the meantime, we can take refuge in him, the God who is our help. And finally, the God who is our hope. Even when troublemakers and naysayers won't go away, God is our hope. Hope is a person or a thing who may help or save someone. And verses 8 to 11, that's your homework. Read those verses if you don't read anything else. Stand out and speak directly to us, where God says to us, be still, cease and desist. Know that I am God. In the context of the psalm, it means stop warring and fighting against each other for supremacy. You know, my digital platform is better than yours. My church is better than yours. You know, Brian has already told us, don't compare. That's not what God's called us to. God will have the last word. It is his will that we should seek, because it's his will, his purposes that will prevail. During the Spanish flu and the Black Death, history suggests that there was a revival of inner spirituality. Some say even the development of new contemplative, I can never say that word, new contemplative spiritualities. I wonder, with COVID-19, what will it bring forth? What will it birth in and for the people of God? In this scenario, it's not for us to fix things, but it is to trust God. Be still, God says. Know that he is God. Follow his lead. What God has been for his people in the past, he is still today and will continue to be in the future. So the psalmist says, stop warring amongst yourselves. Stop this fussing and fighting as you used to over who's sitting in your seats. And the fact that you're not singing your favorite worship songs, and some of us, because we don't have streaming license, can't sing any song anyway, or fussing over toilet paper and pasta. The psalmist says, stop all that and trust God. Have faith in God, who is our refuge, our safe place, our assurance, our help, our sure and certain hope. We therefore need to acknowledge that with COVID-19, some of us, as we've heard, we're scrambling to Zoom, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and other digital means of being church. Apart from those, of course, like Darren, who were already digital and virtual church. Not being able to gather together as we did prior to March 17th, therefore means, as we've also heard, some things have changed. Lives have been lost, yes. But for those of us who had them, the buildings have not actually gone, although some may have. Yet we have more than just survived, despite loss of lives, loss of revenue, loss of business, and so on. But it is as this rebirthing, this reviving of a city after siege or an earthquake, the new, that which is revived, is not the same as the old. That which is revived is not the same as the old. Buildings are built anew to more exacting standards after an earthquake. Flood defenses are erected after a flood, but they're not erected from the same old material. Revival does not therefore mean going back to restart and do the same things we used to do before in the same way. Revival is the process of becoming more active again. It is an awakening of interest and passion for God and love for neighbor. Renewal is not the same as revival. As someone once said, revival happens when the Spirit of God convicts us of our calloused ways and selfishness, sinful lifestyles, and bringing us to repentance, breaking us out of our cages that the church buildings might have become, to change the way we think. There's a sense in which COVID-19 is a blessing to the church, in that it has forced us to think again about what it means to be church, to be the body of Christ. It hopefully has helped us to reevaluate our focus and our priorities. It has caused us to think about, first of all, as we've been hearing throughout this webinar, how we can continue to do church services and maintain regular weekly contact and pastoral care. Some of us are doing that as a survival. But also, as we've heard, it's a splendid opportunity for our rebirth, for our revival, for our transformation. If we've learned nothing else from COVID-19, we should at least have learned that we don't actually have to do church the way we've always done it, and that some things can and perhaps should be let go. It was time to be still. It is a time to be still and know that Yahweh is God. Psalm 46 therefore reminds us, as we move from survival to revival, and we're in revival in this digital stage, that things will shake and be moved and even removed. But God is a very present help, a permanent fixture. He is our refuge, our help, and our hope. Amen.
Amen, indeed. Thank you, Dofa. That was fantastic. And quite frankly, I could listen to you all day long. That was really wonderful. And I'm sure everyone else appreciated it as well. Fantastic message for us to share. And I also want to thank everybody else who's contributed today, Pastor David, Bryony, and Darren. Pete and I have been so blessed that you would agree to join with us and share today. I want to thank everybody who's attended. It's been amazing to have so many people come today. We have a survey that will go out to you after this. We want to hear what you thought of today. We're sorry we've run a little bit over. First one, we'll try and keep it precisely to time next time. But I think one of the things that has been really clear today, that this is not a trivial thing. This is not just about whether I use Zoom or Skype or YouTube Live or Facebook Live to do a Sunday service. This is about church. This is about people. This is about God's mission through us to the nation. And so that's why we've set up a big long series of these. We're publishing now the next 8 dates. We're going to be doing, we've got some amazing topics with some amazing contributors. We're going to be doing apologetics in the digital age. How do we communicate faith and explain the Christian faith? We've got John Lennox, who I'm sure you will be familiar with, who'll be joining us for that on the 28th of May. We're going to do digital fundraising because we know that churches are suffering right now without the income from the plates. We're going to do Digital Church 101 basics, going specifically at church life. We're going to be looking at the real practical things of how to manage teams remotely, how to manage volunteer teams, staff teams. How do we welcome people online? What digital tools should we use? How do we include people who wouldn't normally be included in church life? So we've got a wonderful package coming up. If you go to premierdigital.info/webinars, and I'll just put the link on the screen now, and you can book for those. So the best way of doing this would be to attend all 4 in a month. That's 1 a week for £29.50 per month, and we'll also give you a free ticket to the Premier Digital Conference, which happens at the end of at the middle of November, and you'll also get to download any that you can't attend as well, so you'll get everything that we're going to put out, and we're going to be doing these into the future. Or each individual one is £19.50. We've also created a Facebook group where a few of us will be going straight away after this to carry on the conversation. We'd love for you to join the Facebook group and carry on discussing it. We really need to learn from each other. The speakers certainly don't have all the answers, but between us, everyone included, everyone on this call, together, I think we probably have the combined wisdom to take this forward. And what I would love to do, I'm gonna pray to close, a verbal prayer. But what I would love for you to do is to put your prayers for the church and for the nation in the chat as we finish this. It would be lovely if you would do that, and we would bring this to prayer as we close today. So let's pray, and please do pray in the chat as well. Father God, we want to thank you for your promise of Scripture that you will build your church and the gates of hell will not prevail. Lord, pray that you would keep us from fear and anxiety about the way the world is changing right now. Keep us from fear and anxiety about the future of the church, Lord. So much that the enemy wants to do is to knock our confidence, Father. So we pray that you would help us to take to heart the words that Dofa has shared with us, Lord, that encouragement, that your ever-present help with us, Lord. We want to pray for each church here, each congregation here. We pray your blessing upon them, Lord. Each person who is seeking to do their best for you in their community, in their congregation, and their ministry from you. And just pray that you would really establish them and the work of their hands. I pray that you would bring into their lives people who can help them do digital church really well. I pray that you would bring into their lives the resources they need, the blogs, the help videos, the tools, anything that they need, Lord. I want to pray your blessing on them, that they would have it. I pray that together we would faithfully serve you for the purpose not of building our churches, but of extending your kingdom and bringing your gospel to a nation that is hurting. And as we continue to go forward and to look at all these different subjects, Lord, I pray that you would keep your word, your spirit, your truth preeminent, Lord. May we never get distracted by the toys and the trinkets of the digital world, but may we always be focused on our ministry and our calling. But with confidence and through excellence, I pray that we would take your gospel to this nation with increasing power and effectiveness through digital. Amen. Thank you very much, everybody. It has been fantastic to have you, and we pray we will see you all again soon. Thank you to all of the panelists, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Bye-bye.